This is a CBS News special report. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and we are coming on the air with breaking news because, as you can see, we're about to hear from police in Nashville after that deadly shooting at a Christian private school in Nashville.
Thank you, Don.
Let's listen in as we are learning the names of the victims.
I want to express our grief and our city's grief on this unexpected day, this worst day. But let us love each other and support each other and hug each other and pray for each other and pray for our families. But also let us praise our first responders. 14 minutes, I believe under fire, running to gunfire. And then I want to thank the seamless response for federal and state authorities from our police and fire department. So this morning I was in Boston to see my own son's sporting event, and now I am overwhelmed at the thought of the loss of these families, of the future lost by these children and their families. And the leading cause of kids' death now is guns and gunfire, and that is unacceptable. But I want to thank the fast response of our officers. Guns are quick. They don't give you much time. So even in a remarkably fast response, there was not enough time. And those guns stole precious lives from us today in Nashville. And in this dark hour, let us support each other. Let us go and hug our children a little bit closer tonight. And thank you all for being here, and I want to ask Chief Drake to come and give us an update.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. Again, thank you all for being here. Just an update from today's press conference. We've identified the shooter as Audrey Hale, a 28-year-old female that lived in the Nashville area. We have investigations ongoing now at the residence on Brightwood Avenue. And we have made contact with the father that lived at that residence and are putting together more information. We've also determined there were maps drawn of the school in detail of surveillance, entry points, etc. We know and believe that entry was gained through shooting through one of the doors is how they actually got into the school. I want to take the time to at least say, and I won't say the victims' names, I'll let Don say that, but out of the 6 victims, 3 adults, 3 of those were children. 2 of them were age 9, 1 was 8, about to be 9. All the families have been contacted. The victims' families have been contacted as well. My thoughts and prayers go out to the family. When we send our kids to school or to any place of safety, we expect them to live, learn, have fun, and come back from that day's experience. We don't anticipate things like this. And I want to say thank you to our partners, to Chief Swan, to Glenn Funk, to our mayor for his support, to our federal partners. But also I want to say thank you to our first responders who got there and immediately went in and addressed the threat of someone that had multiple rounds of ammunition, prepared for a confrontation with law enforcement, prepared to do more harm than was actually done, and we were able to stop the threat, and unfortunately 6 victims. So my thoughts and prayers again, but the praise go to the men and women. As I've said before, we will not wait. I was hoping this day would never ever come here in this city, but we would never wait to make entry and to go in and to stop a threat, especially when it deals with our children. So thank you. Good night. Just me. They're not saying anything.
I'm going to go over the victims' names with you now. The 3 9-year-olds who were killed: Evelyn Dickhouse, William Kinney, Hallie Scruggs. 3 adults: Mike Hill, a custodian, age 61, Cynthia Peak, to my understanding a substitute teacher, age 61, and Catherine Kuntz, age 60. As Chief Drake said, we have identified the active shooter as Audrey Elizabeth Hale, age 28. We'll take just a few questions if you have any.
Don, do you believe that she was a former student at the school?
Yes, we do. Chief, you want to address that?
Yes, from our investigations tell us that she was a former student at the school. I don't know what grade she's attended or grades, but we do firmly believe she was a student there.
Did she identify as transgender?
She does identify as transgender, yes.
Is there any reason to believe the shooter first went to the church before going to the school?
I can't give you that information. I wasn't sure. We know that the minute the calls came in, we responded to the church, so to the school.
To the school.
Yeah.
Was there 2 officers that went in when they first got there? Do you know how many there was when they first entered?
So it was 5 officers that immediately went in and addressed. We have video that we're going to release, but you can see in the video, you can hear gunfire going on as they're in the school. They address the threat and take that threat down.
And Chief, what do we know about her weapons?
So we know there were 2 AR-style weapons, one a rifle, another was an AR-style pistol, and the other was a handgun. We believe 2 of those may have been obtained legally, locally here.
Can you confirm that one of the adult victims, Catherine Coops, was head of the school?
Was what?
Was head of the school?
There was some, I don't know her exact capacity within the school, but it was higher up in the echelon.
And were any of the children victims related to any of the school staff?
Unsure. I believe one may have been, but I can't confirm that.
Did the shooter have any criminal history at all?
No history at all.
And no motive at this point? Anything discovered in the apartment or house?
No, we have a manifesto. We have some writings that we're going over that pertain to this day, the actual incident. We have a map drawn out of how this was all going to take place. There's right now a theory of that we may be able to talk about later, but it's not confirmed, and so we'll put that out as soon as we can.
And Chief, is there any reason to believe that how she identifies white?
I'm sorry, I knocked someone's mic over. I didn't hear you. Say that again, sir.
Is there any reason to believe that how she identifies has any motive for targeting the school?
We can give you that at a later time. There is some theory to that. We're investigating all the leads, and once we know exactly, we will let you know.
So was this a targeted attack?
It was.
Do we know about a history of mental illness? Man or woman?
Don't know any history of mental illness at this time, but we are looking at that as the investigation is ongoing. And I'm sorry.
She identifies as a transgender man or woman?
Woman.
Was this the only school that was targeted?
It was the only school that was targeted. There was another location that was mentioned, but because of a threat assessment by the suspect, too much security, they decided not to. And that area was here in Nashville, so we're continuing with that investigation as well. Right now, we believe it's a lone assailant, and we don't anticipate any further damage at this time, but we're still investigating.
This Brightwood address, she lived there with her parents? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
So the scene is going to be processed throughout the night, probably into tomorrow. This is an extensive scene. As you know, she entered the building, which is one structure. The church and the school are in one building. She entered on the lower floor. There were shots fired on the lower floor before she went to the upper level, and it was on the upper level where she was confronted by police and killed. So understand the scene processing will take place over at least 2 days, today and tomorrow. And we'll have more details for you, including the release of video, perhaps tonight, but if not tonight, certainly tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
And some chilling details we are just learning from the chief of police there in Nashville, John Drake, saying this was in fact a targeted attack by a former student, a 28-year-old named Audrey Hale, who is transgender. She lived with her parents. This was premeditated, according to the chief, that they found inside that home some maps of the school, surveillance, some writings in his words. The chief also saying there was a map of how this was going to take place. They have a theory on the motive, but he said it's not confirmed at this point. The suspect, Audrey Hale, no criminal history, according to the chief, and he once again said something that he said earlier today in terms of the weapons, 2 assault-style weapons and a pistol. The chief saying he had thought that perhaps 2 of those weapons were obtained legally. Let's bring in our justice correspondent, Jeff Pegues, and already we're learning a lot, but number one, law enforcement acted very quickly.
Yeah, they sure did. It took about 14 minutes from the time that the call came in for them to neutralize the suspect. And so what that says is they didn't hesitate. And that's the way you're supposed to attack these kinds of situations. The first officers on scene are taught to go in, to head for the gunfire. And it sounds like, at least at this time, that's what they did. I also want to underline something else that's important, or that they said. They talk about the maps, the details that were found at this home that they're searching. They talked about what could end up leading to a motive in this case, where they said that this suspect chose that school after looking at another potential target and seeing that that target had too much security. So apparently, according to investigators, this suspect chose the target with the least amount of security, happened to be the school that she went to.
This is a private Christian school called The Covenant. We are learning there were 3 9-year-olds who died today, as well as 3 adults who worked at the school, including a custodian, 1 substitute teacher, and what appears to be the current head of the school there. We don't know a motive at this point. One thing we do know, and Jeff, because you and I have covered this, is the frequency and prevalence of school shootings and now gun violence, the leading cause of death among America's children.
Yeah, for some reason, these kinds of shootings have really ticked up in the last year. You'll recall, and I certainly do, during the pandemic, we weren't covering a lot of school shootings. Why? Because the schools were closed down. And then once things began to get back to normal, well, then you had school shootings once again. And now there seems to be this pace to them. And that's what we're seeing, more of a frequency of these kinds of shootings, and sadly targeting the most vulnerable in our communities.
Now even the children younger and younger, as we have seen with Uvalde and now here today at the Covenant School in Nashville. On this very subject, I want to bring in retired FBI Special Agent Catherine Schweitz. She was tapped by the FBI to create their active shooter program in the wake of Sandy Hook. Catherine, you just heard from the police chief. What stood out to you?
Couple of things, I'm pleased, which sounds sad to say at a day like this, but I'm pleased to hear the first responders, the comfort and the skills that they have to take that chaos and turn it into calm. That's so important for a community. Nashville is just like every other community. It needs to have, calm come to the scene, and they're going to do that. They know how to respond to deal with the families, the victims, the search areas, but also the fact that, as Jeff was just mentioning, the precursor, the pre-events that were done. It's not unusual. It's very common for shooters to scope out scenes. We saw the Pulse nightclub shooter do that. We've seen tons of shooters who do that surveillance ahead of time. They run their routes ahead of time to see whether or not they can get into a door. And so that was something else that I thought was particularly interesting, because we're going to clearly get, and the chief was very vocal about the kinds of facts and details that we're going to get. They'll be providing us with a tremendous amount of information that will really help us to find a way to stop the next shooter.
What was your sense when people asked about the motive?
Yeah, motive is a little bit of a, motives can be a lot of things, and a motive doesn't really tell us whether somebody's going to do something. A lot of individuals who do these kinds of shootings, and I will say with school shootings, school shooters in general, 2 out of 3 of them are in their teens or in their 20s. So this person was right on the mark with what we would see. They also all shoot in their neighborhoods for the most part. Very few of them travel. So it's not surprising that a shooter would go beyond their neighborhood or beyond the areas that they're familiar with to do that. But the one thing that I think is kind of interesting about the shooter and the length of time and the information that we're going to get is it's clear that right away law enforcement has gathered video, written images, have cooperative parents who are allowing them to search the home right away without worrying about, getting a search warrant maybe, although I don't know if that's true, but it looks like they've got a voluntary search, which is great. It'll help us to really build a picture of what caused this person to be so troubled and strike out in this way, because that's really what we have here is somebody who just was very troubled and found they couldn't deal with the grievances they had, whether they were real or perceived, and they had to strike out and sadly took all these lives for no reason.
Former FBI Special Agent Catherine Schweit, thank you for joining us. Jeff Pegues as well. Today, a family's worst nightmare coming true as they are learning their loved ones killed at a private Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee. You see here the pictures of hundreds of school children being loaded onto 5 school buses to be taken to a family reunification center, where our local affiliate and reporters there say that when the school buses arrived at the family unification center, you can only imagine the reaction by parents. The children on the buses were singing. So a terrible, awful day here in America. A reminder to law enforcement, as soon as they got the call, acting very quickly, perhaps saving lives within 14 minutes, neutralizing the suspect there. Also, another reminder about what is now the leading cause of death among children in America. Years ago, it was car accidents. Well, today, it is gun violence. We will continue our coverage on CBS News Streaming, Your Local News, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Norah O'Donnell.